through my journey of just having sex with no connection, I started to feel like empty. The more I started to have sex with people without the connection, the emptier I felt. And as I started to want to connect to that person in a way that I would a partner, I found that most people were not able to receive that level of intimacy. I was completely open.
Yeah.
Most people aren't as open as me, so they were kind of open because they want it, but they weren't able to receive it because I wasn't their chosen partner.
We don't feel connected because we don't know how to be present in the moment with each other. We're always on our A game and like trying to look a certain way, trying to perform. And you know, the first few months of dating, generally you're going to be on your, what do they call it? Like on best behavior, you know, so that they don't see the little flaws that make you human. But actually it's when we show these flaws, it's when we actually ask the hard question. Active sex can be seen as a lot more intimate, but actually it's not anymore. Right? It should be. I think it's super intimate and sacred to connect sexually with somebody, or it should be, but it's not like that necessarily unless we want it to be. Yeah.
People always ask me like, what type do I have? And I don't have a type because I know that it's just the energy, and someone who I don't find attractive, I'm attracted to, and someone I do find attractive, when I start talking to them, there's just no connection there.
Although that's a story maybe as well, right? You may very well find someone that you're really attracted to that has the energetic connection as well. But I know what you mean. Sometimes when we just kind of stop at that, you know, we may not have the energetic connection that goes with the physical attraction, for sure.
Just quickly, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who still listens to the podcast. I started 4 years ago, and since then I've had over 1 million downloads. I get 5,000 downloads per month, and I've had over 200 different guests. So a massive thank you to everyone who still listens. If you could please do me a favour, if you could rate and review the podcast, that would be amazing because it helps get the podcast out to new, conscious people like yourself. And my goal is to awaken as many people around the world. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's YesKingOliver. Should you wish to see what I get up to on my day-to-day moments. Back to the episode. So growing up, I was always chasing the next thing, and part of that chase was I could never just be by myself. I was always on dating apps. From as early as 18, I was on Tinder, excessively swiping every 5 minutes, to the point where it became like a numbers game where I would just swipe everybody, and then you might get 5 people, and then you'd immediately say, let's do a video call, and then you can see there's a connection or not, and then you'd meet because life is short. And through my journey of just having sex with no connection, I started to feel like empty. The more I started to have sex with people without the connection, the emptier I felt. And as I started to want to connect to that person in a way that I would a partner, I found that most people were not able to receive that level of intimacy. And so now there was like this weird energy between us where I was completely open.
Yeah.
Most people aren't as open as me. So they were kind of open because they want it, but they weren't able to receive it because I wasn't their chosen partner. And so I stopped just endlessly sleeping around, and I started to do more workshops, like conscious connecting workshops, where I would just look at people and hold their hand and just breathe with them. And that became so addictive and so meaningful and so powerful that I'm not on dating apps anymore, just meeting people just for sex. I'd rather just sit and make eye contact with somebody and breathe, because that is so nourishing and feels so incredible compared to the sex with no connection that I've just found another life, which is that connecting with a human.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all this. It's beautiful. I think, there's definitely a thing around, we're so used to instant gratification and having a release, right? Because we're not actually, like, we're always go. There's so much happening, and we want distractions. We want to escape from our day to day. We want to have, like this kind of instant validation of like, ooh, they like me back, and let's do this. Let's go on a date. Let's have sex. Let's do, right? And it's really, it doesn't fill our soul at all, right? Like, it's very common to hear people that go to sex parties, or that have like big weekends and they hook up with different people, or even just, you know, connect with their one play partner, and, you know, at the end of the weekend they go back to work, and it's like, you feel kind of empty, you feel a bit of a void, it feels a bit meaningless, all of that. And so, yeah, that's definitely a thing that I've experienced too.
It's like people that play Xbox every evening or PlayStation. It's just their brain is now always thinking about the PlayStation and the Xbox and that high. And if they actually sit and ask themselves, am I really enjoying this game, or am I just frustrated because actually I want to be connecting with people in the real world, going bike riding, going walking in the woods, finding squirrels, then the answer is probably no. And the same as, you know, people ask themselves, are they actually happy having sex with their partner? Are they really getting what they want in terms of the level of intimacy, the hold, the safe space? Probably not. And for most stereotypical men, it is just about the end goal. And obviously when they do achieve the end goal, women are left unsatisfied, like, fuck's sake. Which means that then it creates a dissonance between the partners. And just simple conversation of, what do you want from me? What can I do for you? Where you completely forget about yourself and what you want and just ask the other person, what can I do for you? Eventually they'll be so heard in the way they want to be, then naturally it will end up being, okay, now what can I do for you? And people will create this amazing dynamic between each other of openness with that person. And it's what everyone's seeking, but people will just don't really actually know how to get there.
We don't know how to connect anymore. We don't know how to connect to people. We feel like we're connecting because we're going to hang out, we're going to have, you know, we're going to go for coffee, we're going to have a chat, we're going to meet, we might even have sex, but we don't actually know how to connect on a soul level, on a heart level. And these little moments of connecting with each other, they just don't fill that need that we have for deep connection and deep presence in connection. And I think that's the problem, is that when we don't feel connected because we don't know how to be present in the moment with each other. We don't really want to ask questions that actually make us connect deeper. We don't really want to show our vulnerabilities. We don't really want to, you know, show our authenticity because, you know, we're always on our A game and like trying to look a certain way, trying to perform. And, you know, the first few months of dating, generally you're going to be on your, what do they call it? Like on best behavior, you know, so that they don't see the little flaws that make you human. But actually it's when we show these flaws, it's when we actually ask the hard questions and like, are you actually, you know, what do you want with this connection? What are your intentions? Can you be present with me? That's when we actually start to connect on a deeper level. And so when we do an eye gazing for 5 minutes, that's why we feel more connected than if we actually have just quick sex with somebody that we just met, even though the act of sex can be seen as a lot more intimate, but actually it's not anymore. Right? It should be. I think it's super, super intimate and sacred to connect sexually with somebody, or it should be, but it's not like that necessarily unless we want it to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So growing up, you know, I craved sex because I craved that connection, and through trial and error of dating and having sex with so many people, did I work out, okay, what did I enjoy about that person that not the person before didn't give me, and what didn't I like? And through just trial and error, I realised that it was the connection with the person and not the sex. It was the back tickles before and after. It wasn't even to do with the sex. But then we're programmed to think that in order to get what we want, which is actually the intimacy, you've got to be naked and having sex, right? And it's absolute nonsense because you can just be on a park bench eye gazing with somebody. But because we see it as just one package, we think in order to get that, we have to take our clothes off and have sex. And I realised that it's actually not the sex I wanted. It was the human connection. And when I finally cracked this, I didn't have this desperate energy anymore. And as a result, I feel more people gravitating towards me. Because most people, they're always searching for something. Not everyone is just completely grateful with what they have, and then whatever thought they have is now bringing it back to them. This is law of attraction. And again, I was going against the laws that I know by just being so desperate. And ironically, I feel so whole and content not seeking and chasing that I don't need it anymore. And then I realised how much time I wasted on these apps when you could just go out into the real world and speak to someone at the bus stop.
Yeah, and also I want to acknowledge that it is hard to just speak to the person at the bus stop, right? Because we're
Yeah.
not used to that, right? We're really not used to this. I used to be a teacher many years ago, and I realized how, young generations are even worse than we are. They really don't know how to connect if it's not from a phone or through a screen. We really have lost the way of connection. And what happens is that when we actually connect through, in these beautiful workshops where we do eye gazing, or when we actually bring more of our heart and we really kind of put ourselves out there, what happens is that it really triggers the things in us that really want to hide, right? The things that our ego doesn't want to show, and that hides to, thinking that it's keeping us safe. And so we're trying to connect, but then we don't really know how. And then when we do try, the good ways to connect, then our egos try to protect us so much, and then we feel so vulnerable, and then all of our shit comes up, and then we freak out, and then sometimes we go and then we look for the next person. But it's really, I think we kind of we lost the art of actually connecting with each other and the purpose of connection. Like, we're social creatures. We need connection to survive, and we're not in relationships, I don't think, like romantic relationships, to feel more whole, or to bring more joy or happiness. We are with each other so that we can grow, and to grow we need to heal our shit, and our shit is going to come up to give us the opportunity to heal, so that we can grow and expand and become our best version. But the process to that is really painful, and it's really difficult. And because we're so, it's so easy to just grab your phone and go on Tinder and forget about all of this, then that's what we do, right? And so yeah, it's really, I think it comes down to like really what we want and going for that regardless of how painful it can be.
Yeah, so one of the things that I saw on your Instagram was, people would choose to only speak to people they're attracted to. And the old me would have only spoken to people who I find attractive. But through experience of doing these workshops, the best things and moments come from people who you wouldn't have otherwise spoken to, because they're not attractive, which is actually ridiculous, because we're all on energy frequencies, gravitating towards people at the same energy that will teach us something in that moment. And if you're choosing where to go, you're presuming that that's a lesson you need to learn, when that's not the case. The lessons are what you need to learn. And if you're walking around trying to find somebody, well, you're acting with like, okay, I want this person because I want this. When actually you should be attracting in terms of energy and getting what your soul needs, which is only possible on an energetic level. So when I do these workshops, I purposely don't look, and you're not supposed to look, but people do have a peek, whatever. But because I know that the best interactions I've had is from people that I wouldn't have spoken to, male and female. And it's so nourishing to know that I've completely dropped my ego and just embraced that person in front of me. And it's magical, because that connection with a human that I wouldn't have spoken to, it's like a whole new world of what would have happened if I'd only chosen people that I find attractive, instead of just experiencing a moment with somebody who I might not have ever spoken to ever.
Yeah, I think that there are different lessons that we learn, right? And one lesson might be to go to the person that you're actually attracted to and be, and maybe receive a no, or maybe receive, a connection and be in that and heal an abandonment wound that you had, right? So I think lessons are to be had with everyone. The thing that I find really important though is to drop so many of us were just, because we are so conditioned, and that's normal, right? We're conditioned to like certain things, from our foods to the people that we connect with, and the clothes that we wear, and it's not wrong in itself. But the conditioning stops us from really getting what we're supposed to get in that moment. And I think in temple spaces, what I run, I think in temple spaces it's so important to drop the conditioning and to just be open to whoever is brought in front of us. It doesn't mean, go and have an intimate connection with somebody you're not attracted to. It just means be open to have that conversation, so that maybe the edge or the lesson that you need to learn, or the practice for you in this moment, is to say, thank you so much for showing interest towards me, but I'm not interested. Maybe that's to claim a boundary, or to own, your desires, or to say like, listen, I find you really amazing, but actually this person has been really, I've had this really amazing connection with this person, and I want to like pursue this a bit further. So you have to actually say the hard things that are true for you in the moment. But when we really just go for the person we're interested in, first of all, we're driven by conditioning. We're driven by desire that is not necessarily a core desire. It's just a superficial desire. And then we actually, because we may not be super attracted to everyone, But I swear to God, after each event, when we've actually opened ourselves, we've become vulnerable, we've shared intimate stuff with other people, everybody becomes more attractive. So we actually see the beauty in everyone beyond their meat suit, you know, beyond what they actually look like, because energetically it's so much more powerful. I've seen so many people, you know, in partnerships with people that were like less attractive or more attractive, and sometimes you're kind of like, oh wow, like she's so beautiful, what is she doing with this guy, right? Like we hear this sometimes. And actually she felt his core, she felt his energy, and vice versa, right? He's with her because she's so magnetic beyond what she looks like, and now like he's infatuated with her, you know, and it's a beautiful realization that we have when we're like, actually there's so much more. And that's why sometimes we go for the person that we feel attracted to, and then it falls short of expectation, right? We kind of feel like, oh, it's not actually what I expected it to be, because they're more than what they look like, you know?
Yeah, so what came to me was, well, the first thing is people always ask me, like, what type do I have? And I don't have a type, because I know that it's just the energy, and someone who I don't find attractive, I'm attracted to, and someone I do find attractive, when I start talking to them, there's just no connection there. There was a...
Although that's a story maybe as well, right? You may very well find someone that you're really attracted to that has the energetic connection as well. But I know what you mean. Sometimes when we just kind of stop at that, you know, we may not have the energetic connection that goes with the physical attraction, for sure.
What I was going to say is, if, for example, you are in a room with somebody and they come up to you and you didn't find them attractive, you might have more confidence to say it and set a boundary of, no, thank you.
Yeah.
If, for example, you find them attractive and you might just want to have some fun, you might not set that boundary or say what you'd really say, because you've got another agenda. Or you might ruin another option if you say that thing. Or you don't want to close any doors, or you might offend them. So as you say, when we're conditioned with the physical, we wouldn't be truly present and honour ourselves and say what we would say if we didn't already have this perception of them based on what we want. So just turning up and seeing them as a human being and honouring yourself without any hidden agendas, it's powerful. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And I think you know, I would say I am human. I have a type. I've never dated that type though, because generally, you know, it comes with stories as well, right? It can be, well, oh, he's my type, but I wouldn't go towards him because he's probably really arrogant because he's so handsome, or he's probably already with somebody, so I'm not even going to try, or he's probably not going to be into me, so I'm going to, right? So there's a lot of stories even around my type, right? So it's not just about like forgetting about the type, because we are humans, you know, like we are having a human experience. And as we said earlier, you know, we have likes and dislikes, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as it doesn't close us from other possibilities. But there's going to be stories on both sides, right? There are going to be stories when we are, like, if we go to our type versus we don't, you know, there's going to be something, and there's always something to heal. And that's, I think, something that I find really beautiful. You get to really, like in temple spaces, you really get to explore this and be like, oh shit, I didn't know this was still here. You know, I thought this was like my teenage girl self that is speaking here. So I need to heal that. So I'm actually going to go to the person that I think is the most beautiful in the room, and I'm going to have that conversation so that I can feel that worthiness, or I can feel the whatever, and not, you know, be like, not make myself small like I used to do when I was in high school, you know?
Yeah, what came up to me was when I went through my awakening, I would go into London, and I remember being by the Millennium Dome or whatever, or the London Eye.
Right.
And I would choose people to go up to and just have a chat with, okay?
Right.
And in London, you're not used to strangers coming up to you, right? And 50% would walk away and 50% would chat to me. And I did it to get over the rejection of school days, which is I wouldn't speak to anybody because I didn't think they'd be interested. I would mumble, or they'd look at me like, you're so weird, and I'd just choke, and I couldn't fucking talk, and I feel so embarrassed, and my heartbeat would pound. I'd never do it again. And I conquered all these fears of just choosing a really attractive person or a non-attractive person, and then analysing, okay, the non-attractive person spoke to me, the attractive person didn't, but when I spoke to them, there wasn't much there. But the non-attractive person to me had a lot of conversation. So then I was like, okay, what do I really want? Conversation or attraction? And I was going through like the trials and errors of what is really important. And it's interesting because half the people who didn't talk to me, ironically, were the most attractive people.
Right.
And then it made me realise, stereotypically, the most attractive women have had so much attention and have had to deal with so much bullshit that they may push away men more because they're just so used to so much nonsense coming that they ain't got time to filter it. It's just leave me alone. And the people that don't get as much attention will be more open to speaking to a man that comes up to them randomly on the park bench in London, and then that true connection happens. So there's so many ways of looking at the same thing. No wrong or right. It's just interesting to go back to analysing what I did to get over that rejection.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like what you're saying, you know, I think it's really interesting because we really see each other from our own lenses, right? Like I see you with my own perspective, so I see you in a certain way, and to someone I can be a very attractive person, and to another I'm not, right? Like, and it's okay. And I feel like in my body, in my own lived experience, I have both. Right? I have the experience of having a lot of attention and not really always wanting it, and the experience of being rejected and not liked and not wanted, right? And so I think that, we need to shut ourselves off from the noise sometimes and the undesired attention. And I think that for a lot of women, whether they're attractive or not, you know, quote unquote, because it's so subjective, there is a lot of noise and there's a lot of danger as well, you know, like you kind of have to be careful. In London, you can't talk to any, you know, to just any random person, or you can, but it's kind of at your own risk. And if you do and something bad happens, it's like, well, why did you talk to a stranger? You know, so there's a lot of things. And so we're very much, and that goes back to, you know, we can't connect to each other anymore. There's this fear. I used to work in high schools, and the narrative we told the children was to, you know, if somebody, like, don't make eye contact to strangers, don't look at them, don't talk to strangers on the street. And it was all meant to protect them. But that just makes people so fearful. It makes them fearful of the world, and it makes people fearful of teenagers because they look so off-putting and out, you know, like, whatever, you know, I'm not going to talk to you. And so it just makes us hate each other or fearful of each other. And we just have to, you know, we think we have to protect ourselves, but actually no. What we need is to really dissolve all the barriers to connection and connect from a heart place so that we can actually go back to helping each other out and having a random, like, hey, how's your day at the bus stop, you know? But we're still a long way from that, unfortunately, especially in big cities.
Yeah, what's ridiculous is now on the tube in London, there is posters saying no staring at people because you might make people feel uncomfortable. So it's almost like people at the top of the government have here one problem, right, which is sexual harassment, right? And so they think, right, well, how do we solve that? Don't look at anybody. And so they have found a solution to one problem and created 10 fucking more problems, right? Yeah. And again, it's just, that's what's happening with the world. It's not just black and white, and everything is based on a black and white problem where solution creates a problem, problem creates solution, and there's just many spectrums of grey. And then you're left with all these, say, teenagers who can't look at people because they're told not to, and then you have the opposite of the adults thinking, oh, teenagers, they can't communicate anymore. Exactly. And they don't see that, say, at school. Their teachers are like, don't look at people because somebody might feel uncomfortable, and so they go, okay. And they become autistic because they're in their head all the time and not speaking. And they've got behavioural issues, so they fight. And obviously now they can't express themselves to, say, their future partners because they couldn't express themselves to their parents because their teachers might have been like, oh, Timmy always stares at people. Parents say, stop staring at people, Timmy. And so they carry that on to their future partner, and then their kids repeat that pattern because they see dad not speaking to people. And it's like this never-ending cycle of hereditary trauma because essentially one incompetent person not truly understanding the profound impact of a rule.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many complexities, and it's so hard to acknowledge all the complexities and to find solutions for problems, because to each problem there's 1,000 solutions, but also all these solutions, they can bring other problems. And so it's, you know, we live in a society, there's so many of us. We actually need structure, right? We need structure. We need ways to do things. We need ways that people can feel safe on the tube. We need ways that, you know, we reduce crime towards young people in you know, small boroughs of London. Like, we need that. And it's not from putting more rules and putting more, you know, I don't even know, like, there's so many conversations. We need to sit down with each other to open our hearts. We need to really strip rather than like put these protections in place. And it's going to take lifetimes, you know? It's going to be so, like, it's such a complex thing. And then that's why I think, again, you know, temple spaces is like to really decondition, to really remove all these layers that we've been putting on top of, you know, in front of our heart to avoid heartbreak, pain, fear, blah, 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 blah. But now I have my own, you have your own, everybody has their own. And so we need to actually really strip from all of these, but it's highly uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can't explain
Risky.
how nourishing these workshops are. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
I've come from a world where I didn't know this whole world existed.
Yeah.
Like this, I did yoga and I meditated, but I
Yeah,
didn't know like all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I think about these workshops, it's going to be for the next generation of people to connect. And like, when you're there, it's uncomfortable to have rejection and have no, but that's part of life. That's Tantra, embracing and accepting and experiencing the discomfort rather than always going for the comfort. And because nowadays people just focus on comfort, as soon as they feel the slight discomfort, they shit themselves and run a mile. And it's like, life is made up of good and the bad, yin and yang. You need to learn to embrace both. And when I was younger, I hated rejection. I don't argue with people because I anticipate an argument coming, and as a choice of making someone laugh and disagreeing on something, why would we have an argument about politics? I'd rather just make you laugh. And sometimes when I do something by accident and someone's offended, I feel horrific.
Yeah.
I feel like I've like the whole world's burnt down, and I'm just like, I'm so sorry. And for them, that's just like another thing in the day where they push back. They could be pushing back with their partner all the time, their boss, their parents, their sister. Because I'm not used to experiencing that. Oliver, no, well, that's really naughty. Why did you do that? That's not very nice. I feel horrific, and I'm like, wow, I don't like this. But it's part of life to be able to experience and embrace discomfort. Otherwise, you're in a fucking bubble of nonsense. It's not real.
Yeah. You can't just escape to, you know, comfort all the time. And that's why if we go back to dating, you know, there's so many serial daters because, oh, something is coming up. Oh, she's not right or he's not right. So I'm just going to go like, this is not working out and I'm going to go find another person because there are literally thousands and thousands of people available on all these dating apps.
Start the honeymoon phase again.
Exactly. Start it over until you realize that actually what's going on is your shit that you need to heal, and everyone is going to come in your path, is going to show that mirror to you, and it's going to actually bring that up so that you actually heal it. But if you don't and you just become complacent and just, you know, go with the person who's just going to be okay with being complacent, if you're lucky, because a lot of people don't really want that. You're just going to go and keep getting the same, you know, face the same blocks and the same challenges. It's just the way it is, you know, and yeah.
Growing up, I used to always want to be the perfect human, and to me, what that meant was being in harmony with everything and everyone at all times. And so every time somebody would say something to me, I would ask them to explain more. So I used to gaslight people because I wasn't heard growing up, so I would just overpower people. And then when someone, actually my twin flame, said that to me, I listened immediately, became aware of when people were talking, and I consciously just talk over them. And it's a sense of like control, which I never had. Nip that in the bud. If I was talking too loud with people, I'd make sure that I'm now talking quietly with, and I'm matching their rapport, because I used to be too much of people. Again, someone brought that up, ticked in the box. Someone came into work once and I went, God, you look awful. Like, have you got much sleep? Because I was just speaking my mind, right? Everyone thinks it, no one says it. Because of my Tourette's, I just used to say it, right? And then she felt so horrific, so bad. I made her feel so shit. I didn't mean to.
Well, you didn't make her feel. She felt shit from hearing these words.
And then that made me realise, okay, you have Tourette's, whatever, you can use as an excuse, maybe it is. But if you can control it and it's making someone not feel nice, why would you do it? So now if I think certain things, I don't say it. And eventually, through trial and error of all these things that people, you know, brought up to me, I didn't do it again. And then there was almost like nothing to fix, because I'd fixed all the major issues. And then if small things come up, like my best friend says, can you listen to me, I've got a problem, and then I'd interrupt him and teach him and tell him the problem. He'd be like, I just need you to listen and shut up. Another thing learned. People should take feedback, and rather than take it as personal, take it as like God's trying to make you like the perfect human. And all you've got to do is face that mirror and reflection of what somebody's saying, put your ego aside, listen to them, think, will it make me a better human? If it's yes, then do it. And then magical shit will happen because it just does.
Yeah, I mean, it's a practice, right?
Yeah,
it's
long
not,
time.
It's not easy. It's not necessarily just like this.
Took me
And
years.
we have an ego, right? Like it comes with, it comes with this soul contract, right? Like we do have an ego. And it's beautiful to have this awareness and to be able to take it in. And there are ways for people to say it as well, right? Like, if I have an argument with my partner and I'm just like, oh, you always do this is so annoying. It's not going to land because he's going to, if it comes from a place of me being triggered, it's going to be very difficult to hold, and his ego, or actually I can also speak for myself. If I'm being told something like this, I'm just going to close off even more. I'm going to be like, well, fuck you then, like I'm going to be doing this even more so because you're saying that this is wrong. And so we're programmed to fight back, and it's really about finding the path to love, finding the path back to the heart. And like you said, like, is that going to make me a better person? Well, then okay, but there's so much conditioning, there are so many experiences that made us fear having our spotlight taken or having our whatever, something taken away from us, and so we're programmed to kind of fight back so that we don't let this happen again, and it's really difficult, but it's really where the work is.
And also, like, what I find incredible about podcasts is that I would listen to a podcast that talks about when you're arguing and how to basically have an argument where you'd listen, breathe and let them continue, put aside what you're going to say. There's almost like a formula, a mathematic formula of how do you have an argument and get out where both people are heard. And it's an equation. Once you understand the equation, you can apply that with anyone, your boss, your parents, someone on a phone call for like sales, your phone provider. And it is a skill that takes time to learn.
Yeah.
Once you master it, it's incredible. And like, there's so many problems in life and there's always something to learn. It's like, how do you balance out all of the shit that we have to deal with, plus listen to a 3-hour podcast about how to have an argument with your partner? It really isn't realistic with the amount of time people have, but it's absolutely necessary to put time into learning these things that are the most important.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, there's so much information. And at the end of the day, we all have 24 hours a day, and we need rest, and we need entertainment and socializing, and we need to feed ourselves and clean our homes and do all of these things. And I think that, yes, it's good to have a podcast playing in the background once in a while, and that's great. And also, if you want to watch a film once in a while or put some music instead, that's also good, right? So I think it's finding the balance of really, being committed to this path of growth, at the same time honoring your need for rest and like rest and recreation, for lack of a better word, right? Like we yes to committing to growth, and also being gentle with ourselves, being compassionate with ourselves. And if we don't master this thing in this relationship, well, hopefully the next one. And if not in this lifetime, hopefully the next one, right? But there's so many layers, and some people have more traumas than others, or some people have, a harder time to deal with the stuff than others. And for some people, communication is really easy, for others it's difficult. And so it's really about, not necessarily beating ourselves up, but being aware and bringing more awareness and trying every day to be, at least a little bit better. Right.
What is the one of the most profound things you do in a temple that gets the incredible best results every time out of all the other stuff there?
I don't know if it comes down to one ritual or one thing. Shall we maybe explain what a temple is?
Yeah.
So temple spaces, well, my temple spaces anyways, they're quite long sessions, right? So it's about 6 hours of, half the time we're going to have guided practices and rituals to really connect to each other, to ourselves and to the people in the room, come out of our heads and then really get into our bodies, right? And so we'll go through various exercises or rituals to really allow us to come into presence with each other. And then the second, or the last part of the temple, is free exploration. So there are no boundaries per se, except for our own. And so we're free to explore. And by no boundaries, I mean, these are sex positive spaces. So anything really can go down. And what I think is really powerful about these spaces is that it really raises the standard for what we accept in our day-to-day and how we show up, right? So the rituals that we have will always have some eye gazing. We'll always have some bowing. I love bowing at people, and I love being bowed at. truly one of the most powerful things that I think can happen, right? You're bowing at somebody not in submission, but in reverence to all that they are. They're divine, they're human, everything. And it's really difficult sometimes to bow at someone because we're like, oh my God, like I don't even know this person. I'm already kind of like submitting to them. There's a lot of stories. And it's also really difficult to receive being bowed at because it's like, oh my God, am I worthy of this? Like, should I, it's okay, like come back up, right? There's all these resistances and all these stories. But ultimately what happens is that as we eye gaze and then we bow and we're bowed at, and then we share maybe something vulnerable about ourselves. And then we hear somebody share something vulnerable about themselves. And then we bring in the touch, and then we bring, making a request. Oh, I've got, pain in my shoulder. I would love to have a massage here. Or like, I haven't had a really proper hug in so long. Like I would love to be held for 3 minutes. And you bring all of these things, and then you're like, fuck. And I'm still waiting for this jerk to text back.
Exactly.
And I'm still waiting for her to, introduce me to her family or to do the thing, right? And all these things that we accept. And then we're like seen and honored for all of the divine that is in us. It's like, oh no, I'm not doing this anymore. And like, if I can speak my truth and my desire, if I can own my desire in a space like this, I can ask for that raise at work.
Yeah.
I can tell my parents that no, I will not spend Christmas with them this year. I can, there's so many things that we can do because these spaces are like super like fast forward to growth and like, oh my God, this is so vulnerable, this is so intense. But then when you actually do the thing, like when you cross that threshold and you're like, oh shit, this is how I want to show up, then you can show up like this everywhere, in all areas of life. So that's why I think they're super powerful.
Yeah, like even the option and the ability to say no to somebody.
Yeah.
People struggle to say no.
It's so hard. It's really hard. We don't want to hurt people, right? Well, a lot of people don't want to hurt people. Some people have less of a hard time. But yeah, to say no is difficult. And to receive a no is painful.
Growing up, I was always told no by my parents, right? So I have a very, not anymore, but no's like Satan. They tell me no, you're going to see Satan, right? So when I was a kid, it was Oliver no. And I go out my way just to say, told you. Now, when I hear a no, unless it's sex, I just ignore it. Because if it's like in business or in life or getting management to give you something for free or returning something on Amazon, that's benefiting me.
Right.
And as long as you have integrity with how you ask and ignore the no, I don't hear no. And so, because I've had no my whole life, I have this, used to have this trigger to a no. But actually, because now I've reprogrammed myself to not hear a no, it's actually very hard for the average person to say no, let alone hear no. Most people, they can't say no. If their friends say, you coming out, they feel like they've got to say yes. Or if it's someone's birthday and they haven't got any money, rather than saying, no, I can't afford this, they'll just pay for it. And these temples allow people to say and look them right in the eye and go, no. Once you get used to saying no, it's very easy just to be like, in your boss, can you stay extra hours? No. Which people be like, yeah, that's fine.
Sure. And I think the worst thing, something that is even worse than saying that, than not being able to say no and doing it anyways, is, when somebody make plans and you're like, oh yeah, I'll come. And you're not actually going to come, and you're not going to come, but you just can't say no to their faces, which would be so much better for the person to receive that.
People want to hear that no.
People want to hear that no. People want honesty. Yeah. People want authenticity. So I've started. There's a line in Friends that Phoebe says, "I really want to help, but I really don't want to," or something like this, right? Oh, I wish I could help, I really don't want to. And it's like, oh, it's refreshing. It's refreshing, and I don't want to be waiting on somebody for ages and then canceling last minute and then, or me being like, hey, are you there? Oh, I'm so sorry, something came up. That's fucking bullshit. And this breaks friendships. This breaks relationships. But if you tell me, listen, I'm not into that. It might hurt my feeling a little bit in the moment, but I'm going to be like, well, thank you for being honest, and I'll ask somebody else or I'll go on my own. But to just pretend we're going to be there until, no.
Because I'm very in tune, I will often feel someone's no, and I will say, just so you know, you don't have to go. And I will be and I will kind of trigger them to say, yeah, actually, no. Because I just from experience know from being let down growing up as a kid, someone says I can come to their party, I get ready, I'm ready to go. Hey, I'm ready, oh, we're not going anymore. He was so heartbroken. Now I'm like, if I feel any resistance, I will kind of say things like, you don't have to come if you don't want to give you the opportunity to say no. Because if I just say, are you coming? And you have the option of yes or no, it'll probably be a yes. But if I give you the choice to say yes or no again, you're probably going to say what you really mean. And from learning this, you really do save so much time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you say no, people actually trust your yeses even more. And that's something really important in temple spaces that a lot of people don't really think about, is that when we're thinking about a sexual context, if I say, oh, I have a boundary, let's not do this, right? Okay, I'm going to give like a really simple example. A lot of us, I'm sure, have said, okay, let's hang out and fool around and stuff, but let's just not have sex, right? And then it heats up and you're like, oh, fuck it, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Now, you've just claimed a boundary and then you've just crossed your own boundary. So the person in front of you, well, if they're not in full integrity, they might just take advantage of it and be like, oh, nice, okay, cool, let's do it. Or they might be really unsettled and be like, well, you just said no. And with the whole kind of, the Me Too movement and all of that, they're gonna be wondering, well, is that okay to do this? Can I actually trust that you're a yes, no now? Because you've just said that this is something that you didn't want to do. So actually the best thing to do is to just say, well, listen, you said no before, so let's leave it at that. Because then you can't trust each other, and then you could be receiving the thing on the other side of, oh, I didn't want to do this, why did you let us happen? And yeah, taking responsibility on both sides, but really claiming our no's make our yeses much more true, and it makes the connection so much more just freer, because I can trust your yes, I can trust your no. And when I get used to receiving no's, then it becomes just normal. It's like, oh, do you want to do this? No? Okay, cool, let's do this instead. Okay, cool. And it's just so much easier. And
I've been in situations where I respected the boundaries so much. Like if someone says no, it's a no, right?
Yeah.
Always during sex.
Yeah.
But because I've honoured that, their boundaries have dropped, and then they're like, oh, actually,
that's true.
I do.
That's true.
Because people can sense and feel when someone's not really hearing the no, and you're trying to touch them to get them a bit horny.
Yeah.
But because I truly understand the boundaries and the no, it's like, okay. And people are like,
yeah.
Is that it? It's almost like they're testing the boundaries of their own empowerment, and it's not actually to do with the sex. It's just how does that person respond?
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's an easy test to pass, where you just respect what they say and actually ask somebody, if you know deep down it's probably going to happen because they want it and there's a chance that they're playing hard to get, do you go with the end result in terms of the energetic place, or do you honour what's here at the present moment, which is, if they say no, it's a no. If they say yes, it's a yes. Even though you've been here before and you know it's going to happen. And it's about honouring and respecting what comes out their mouth. And if they choose to change, then go with that.
Yeah.
And again, it's about respecting the boundaries so you feel heard, feel safe. And then something might happen if they want it to, but always on their terms.
Yeah.
And that's profound.
And that's, for women, safety is the most important, right? The moment a woman feels truly safe, not just with the person in her body and then with the other person, she's going to be so much more open and so much more horny, right? Because she feels safe in that energy, and the energy of safety is extremely hot when it's really truly there. So as you said, if you're like, oh yeah, let's not do it, but you know that's probably going to happen, you're like keeping that in mind, she's going to feel that. We'll feel this 100%. But if you're, okay, I respect this, is really honest, then there is a chance that she changes her mind. And in that case, I would say, well, maybe have this conversation, So it is when the person says, let's not have sex, you can say, okay, or you can say, is that a boundary, or is this how you're feeling right now? Because if it's a boundary, then we're definitely not going to have sex. I'm going to respect that 100%.
No thoughts.
But if it's a, well, right now I don't have this desire, or I'm not ready for this right now. Well, right now I'm a no. It may change later, but I can't tell, right? Then it's different. And then that's why for women, or actually I can only speak for my own experience, I think for me it's always been so much more of an edge to claim my desire than to express a boundary. Because I've been, it's not fun to say, no, I don't want to do that. But as you said, we're so bombarded with, oh, do you want this? No, cat calling, whistling, da-da-da. So you're like, no. But actually to claim my desire, actually, maybe I want more later on. Then we have this like, oh my God, like that whole old slut shame here. Or like women shouldn't want sex, or women's sexuality isn't really, spoken about. And it's like, oh, like, look at that whore, she wants to do this and that with this person she barely knows, right? So there's all of these stories and all these conditioning that actually saying well, I'm not ready to have sex right now, but I might later, can be a really big edge. And so inviting the conversation, is that a boundary, or are you actually just feeling into it and you're not ready?
Okay, that's very interesting. If you had one day left to live, what is the one thing that you would tell the rest of the world?
Oh my God, I don't know. One day to live, what I would tell the rest of the world. Safety is an inside job. It's for you to create. Nobody is there to get you. Try to really come back to the heart. I think that we're so fearful of being hurt or that we close ourselves off. And yeah, we might be hurt, but I really believe that we can recover from anything that's thrown at us if we survive it. And so I would say to just keep an open heart and just keep opening yourself to love, in whatever form that it comes.
So we'll end on 2 points. Respecting a no makes the woman feel safe, which means there's more of a chance of her wanting to be vulnerable and open up later, but you can completely forget it if she doesn't feel safe, and that starts with respecting the boundary for no. Second thing is, there's 2 parts where you know from experience that they might say no and it happens, versus respecting the no, it doesn't happen. Have that conversation rather than have the conversation in your head. Oh, remember last time she gets cuddly and then she ends up fucking me, so she doesn't mean it. Actually verbalize that with them.
Yeah.
There's a power in verbalizing it, so you both are aware of there's 2 paths here, rather than there's 2 paths here, but it's in your head.
Exactly.
Like, what's the power of sharing it with each other, knowing we know the game here, it's all on the table, versus just having the game in our head?
And bringing that, hey, I'm noticing that there's maybe a pattern here. Do you feel an edge sharing your actual desires in the moment? Because I would feel so much more. I would like to be in the loop of what's actually happening for you when you say no, but then it turns into a yes. Why did you not claim this in the first place? Because I want you to feel safe, but I also want to honor the desire I have for you, and I would love for us to have that conversation. Right? So for her to feel safe and to celebrate someone's desire is really important, to celebrate somebody's boundaries, but also to celebrate somebody's desires. You might want something more later, and that's beautiful. And if you don't, well, that's cool too. I respect both, right? And really inviting that connection. And I think that when we do that, we really drop into another layer of relating that is really attractive and really beautiful.
As a woman, right, if you are sat with someone who you find attractive, that you may or may not want more in the future, and he just looked to you and vulnerable and says, look, I know you may not want anything, but I find you really attractive, I'd be open to explore sexual stuff with you. Is that power, is that attractive itself?
I would say it depends on the context, obviously.
You're both in your boundaries.
So if you're in a space where you can talk about this, at work, I would find it a bit difficult, right? So it depends on the context. I would say in a social setting, being mindful with the words, hey, I find you really attractive. Would you be open to exploring a connection? 100% attractive. Maybe not hey, I would love to explore some sexual stuff with you when we're waiting at the bus stop. That's a little bit much, right? So I think that the context, the where we are, what the relationship is important. But somebody, ultimately somebody who's really honest about something, if I can see that he's also able to hold himself and the desire is not consuming him, and so he can hold himself, and I know there's no threat. If I say no, he's not going to jump at me. Yeah, it's 100% attractive.
Even if you don't necessarily find them attractive, if you have all the men that they find attractive, and you've got this person who you wouldn't really look at, has just opened himself up and said he finds you attractive, but there's no doubling down of you can say he's not desperate, but he's just said what he wants and then he's gone back into his body.
Yeah.
Is that attractive?
Yeah, it's 100%. Yeah, I think it's very attractive. Yeah, I think it's very attractive, and it's also... It brings, and I think, women want safety, men want respect, right? So it makes me respect this person a lot, right? I may not be into him. It may not change my desire for him. I might find him a bit more attractive still without wanting any more connection, or I might have a partner, or I may, not be open to that. But I'm going to have a lot of respect for this person, and I'm likely to be if a girlfriend of mine is oh yeah, who's this guy? I might be well, actually, yeah, I think he's pretty cool. I'm likely to recommend him, if I may say, because yes, the vulnerability, the honesty, and the straightforwardness is quite rare. and it's important. And I think I think that, like, you know, we're so used to, you know, communicating in a way that is like, oh, well, and we're trying to like go when we actually want to go there, but we're going here and here and here. And I think, yeah, it's really refreshing to have somebody be like, I find you really attractive. Would you like to go for coffee? Or would you like to have dinner sometimes? It's like, oh, sure. You know, there's something like, oh, okay, unsettling, right? And that's beautiful.
Yeah, okay. Anything you want to promote or plug before we finish?
I mean, come to Divinely Untamed. Come to Divinely Untamed. Temple Nights. Yeah, I think Temple Nights and just all sex positive spaces are really, really important to really get back to our body presence and all the things that we need to really connect. So if you're interested, check out divinelyuntamed.uk on Instagram. And
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please remember to subscribe, turn the bell notifications on, like the episode, and comment below. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's YesKingOliver. Take a look at the other videos to your side. And if you just want to listen to this podcast, you can do so on Apple and Spotify and most other platforms by going to talkwitholiver.com.